There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. Moments that seem so small when they're happening, but later you realize they changed absolutely everything. For me, that moment came on what was supposed to be the happiest night of my life. My wedding night. I was lying in our honeymoon suite, in a bed that smelled of rose petals and expensive sheets, wearing the silk nightgown I'd picked out months before. The champagne was still cold in the ice bucket. The candles were still burning. Everything was perfect. Except my husband wasn't there. Trevor had gotten up around 11:30, said he needed some air, needed to stretch his legs. He kissed my forehead and told me he'd be right back. I remember smiling at him, thinking how lucky I was. How blessed. That was at 11:30. By midnight, I was still alone. And that's when I heard it. Laughter. Coming from somewhere down the hall. Not just any laughter. His laughter. Mixed with another voice. A woman's voice. High and musical and far too comfortable. I sat up in bed, my heart doing something strange in my chest. Something that felt like breaking and burning at the same time. I told myself I was being paranoid. Ridiculous. This was our wedding night. Our wedding night. Nothing could be wrong. But that laughter kept coming. And something inside me, some instinct I didn't even know I had, told me to get up, to follow it, to see. So I did. I walked down that hallway in my bare feet, my silk nightgown whispering against my legs, my heart pounding so loud I thought surely someone would hear it. And what I found at the end of that hallway, behind a door that should have been locked, in a room that should have been empty. Well, that's what this story is about. If you're listening to this while you're getting ready for bed, or maybe you're driving home, or cooking dinner, I want you to know something. This isn't just my story. It's a story about trust, about the masks people wear, about the difference between the life you think you're building and the truth that's hiding underneath. So stay with me, because what happened that night and everything that came after taught me things I wish I'd known sooner, things I need to share. Before we begin, if this story touches your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Are you in Texas? California? Maybe somewhere across the ocean? I'd love to know. Let me start from the beginning, because you can't understand what happened that night without understanding how I got there, without knowing who I was, who I thought I was. My name is Grace. Grace Montgomery. Well, it was Grace Harrison before the wedding. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where your business is everyone's business, and where getting married was still considered the pinnacle of success for a young woman. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, that's how it was. My mother raised me on her own after my father left when I was 6. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to keep our little house and make sure I had everything I needed. She never complained, never made me feel like a burden, but I saw the tiredness in her eyes. I saw the way she rubbed her feet after her shifts at the diner, the way she counted pennies at the kitchen table late at night when she thought I was sleeping. I promised myself I'd make her proud. I'd find a good man, build a stable life, give her grandchildren she could spoil. I'd do everything right. And for a long time, it seemed like I was. I met Trevor Walsh at a charity gala 3 years before our wedding. I'd been working as an event coordinator for a nonprofit in Charlotte, and he was there representing his family's real estate development company, Walsh Properties. You might have heard of them. They owned half the commercial buildings in 3 counties. Trevor was different from anyone I'd ever met. He was tall, always dressed in perfectly tailored suits, with dark hair that he wore swept back and eyes that could make you feel like you were the only person in the room. When he talked to you, he gave you his complete attention, his complete focus. That night, he asked me about my work. Really asked, not just polite small talk. He wanted to know about the nonprofit's mission, about the events I coordinated, about my dreams for the future. We talked for 2 hours straight, standing by the dessert table while the gala went on around us. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, I floated home on a cloud. Our courtship was like something from a movie. He took me to expensive restaurants I'd only seen from the outside. He sent flowers to my office with handwritten notes. He introduced me to his family within the first month, which I took as a sign of how serious he was. His mother, Patricia Walsh, was elegant and polished, the kind of woman who hosted fundraiser luncheons and sat on museum boards. His father, Gregory Walsh, was quieter but equally impressive, a self-made businessman who'd built Walsh Properties from nothing. They seemed to approve of me, though I sometimes felt like I was being quietly evaluated, like I was a candidate for a position rather than someone's girlfriend. But I told myself I was being oversensitive, that wealthy families were just more formal, more careful. Trevor's sister, Miranda, was younger than him by 5 years. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are, with honey-colored hair and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She worked in the family business too, handling interior design for their properties. "I'm so glad Trevor found you," she told me once, squeezing my hand across a table at some family dinner. "He's been alone too long. He needs someone genuine, someone real." I remember feeling grateful for that, for being seen as genuine, as real. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep sharing these real-life experiences with you. Trevor proposed 14 months after we met. He did it on a beach at sunset, the whole romantic setup, complete with a photographer hiding behind the dunes to capture the moment. The ring was stunning, a princess-cut diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across my hand. I said yes before he even finished asking. My mother cried when I called her. Happy tears. Proud tears. "You've done so well, baby," she whispered into the phone. So well. The wedding planning took over my life for the next year. Patricia helped, which was both a blessing and a curse. She had opinions about everything. The venue, the flowers, the music, the guest list. Sometimes I felt like I was planning her wedding instead of mine. But I told myself she just wanted things to be perfect, that she was excited to welcome a new daughter. Trevor's best friend from college, Marcus, was going to be his best man. And I asked my childhood friend, Jasmine Cooper, to be my maid of honor. Jasmine and I had grown up together, survived middle school and high school, and all the drama that came with being young and trying to figure out who you were. She was thrilled when I asked her, "Are you kidding?" "Of course," she'd squealed, jumping up and down in my living room. "Grace, this is going to be amazing. You and Trevor are perfect together." Looking back now, I wonder if there were signs I missed. Little things that didn't quite fit. Moments when Trevor's mask slipped just slightly. Like the time we went to a work party of mine, and he spent the whole evening on his phone, barely talking to my colleagues. Or the way he sometimes looked at me when I was excited about something, like he was humoring a child rather than listening to his partner. Or the way he'd cancel plans at the last minute, always with good reasons. Work emergencies, family obligations, things he just couldn't get out of. I told myself I was being demanding, that adult relationships required flexibility, understanding. But there was one incident, about 6 months before the wedding, that should have made me stop and think. We were supposed to go away for a weekend together. A little cabin in the mountains, just the two of us. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. I'd even taken Friday off work, which was rare for me. Trevor called me Thursday night. "Grace, I'm so sorry. Something's come up with a property deal. I have to fly to Atlanta tomorrow morning." I was disappointed but tried to be understanding. "Okay, maybe we can go next weekend." "Absolutely. I'll make it up to you, I promise." But the next day, Jasmine sent me a photo. She'd been at a restaurant in Charlotte with her boyfriend and had seen Trevor, at a cozy table in the back, with a woman I didn't recognize. When I asked him about it later, he had an explanation ready. It was a potential investor, he said. The Atlanta trip fell through at the last minute, so he'd met with her instead. Pure business. The explanation made sense. It was reasonable. But something about the way he said it, the way his eyes didn't quite meet mine, made my stomach twist. I pushed the feeling away. I was being paranoid, insecure. I needed to trust him. The week before the wedding was chaos. Final fittings, last-minute confirmations. A rehearsal dinner where everyone drank too much champagne and made toasts that made me cry happy tears. Trevor seemed distracted that week. Stressed, he said. Big deal closing at work. His father was putting pressure on him. I rubbed his shoulders and told him everything would be better after the wedding, that we'd have our honeymoon to relax and reconnect. He smiled at me and kissed my forehead. "You're right. I'm lucky to have you." But he said it the way you might thank someone for holding a door open. Polite, grateful, but not intimate. Not the way a man speaks to the woman he's about to marry. I should have noticed that. The wedding day arrived. September 23rd. A perfect autumn day, with golden sunlight and a breeze that smelled like fallen leaves and possibilities. The venue was a renovated barn about 30 miles outside Charlotte, all exposed beams and string lights and mason jars filled with wildflowers. Patricia had wanted something more formal, more traditional, but I'd stood my ground on this one thing. I wanted something that felt like us, like home. My mother helped me into my dress that morning. It was simple, elegant, with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt. Not the elaborate gown Patricia had suggested, but mine, chosen by me. "You look beautiful," my mother whispered, her eyes shining. "Your father would be so proud." Jasmine was there too, in her dusty rose bridesmaid dress, making sure my hair was perfect and my bouquet was fresh and that I had something borrowed and something blue. "How are you feeling?" she asked, squeezing my hand. "Nervous," I admitted. "But happy. Really happy." She smiled. "Trevor's a lucky man." The ceremony was beautiful. I walked down the aisle on my mother's arm, since my father wasn't there to do it. Trevor stood at the altar in his charcoal suit, looking handsome and confident, and when I reached him, he smiled at me. But it was his public smile, the one he used at business meetings and family gatherings, not the private one I'd seen in quiet moments between us. I told myself I was reading too much into everything, that I was nervous and overthinking. We said our vows, traditional ones, nothing personalized, because Trevor had said he wasn't comfortable writing his own. I slipped a ring onto his finger. He slipped one onto mine. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife. Trevor kissed me, and everyone clapped. I was married. If this story is resonating with you, please take a moment to comment below and let me know what time you're watching. I love connecting with you all. The reception was everything it was supposed to be. Dinner, dancing, toasts from friends and family. Marcus gave a speech about Trevor's college days that made everyone laugh. Jasmine gave one about our friendship that made me cry. My mother's speech was short and sweet, just wishing us a lifetime of happiness. Through it all, Trevor was attentive. He held my hand. He danced with me. He smiled for photos. He played the role of devoted groom perfectly. But there was something off. Something I couldn't quite name. He kept checking his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. His jaw was tense. His eyes kept scanning the room like he was looking for something. Someone. Around 9 o'clock, I saw him talking to Jasmine by the bar. Their heads were close together, their conversation intense. When I walked over, they both looked up quickly, almost guilty. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Perfect," Trevor said smoothly. "Just thanking Jasmine for being such a great friend to you." Jasmine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "He's very grateful. We both are." Something about that moment felt wrong. But before I could process it, someone else pulled me away for photos, and the moment was gone. By 11, most of the guests had left. The older relatives, the families with children, the people who had long drives home. Only the wedding party and a few close friends remained, finishing the last of the champagne and dancing to slower songs. Trevor found me on the dance floor. "Ready to head up?" he murmured in my ear. We were staying at the venue that night. They had guest rooms upstairs for the wedding party, and the best suite had been reserved for us. The honeymoon suite, complete with a 4-poster bed and a view of the countryside. I nodded, suddenly shy, suddenly aware that this was it. Our wedding night. We said our goodnights, endured some good-natured teasing from the remaining guests, and climbed the stairs to our room hand in hand. The honeymoon suite was beautiful. Someone had scattered rose petals across the white bedspread. There were candles already lit on every surface, casting a warm golden glow. A bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket by the window, condensation beating on the glass. It should have been romantic. Perfect. Trevor walked in ahead of me and immediately went to the window, staring out at the dark fields beyond. "It's beautiful up here," I said softly, setting my clutch on the dresser. My hands were trembling slightly. Nervous excitement mixed with something else. Something that felt like dread, though I didn't know why. "Yeah," Trevor said without turning around. "Nice view." I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. In all my imaginings of this night, I'd never pictured this awkwardness, this distance. "Should I open the champagne?" I asked. "If you want." His tone was flat, disinterested. I opened the champagne myself, the cork coming out with a soft pop. I poured 2 glasses, walked over to Trevor, and handed him one. "To us," I said, trying to inject warmth into my voice, trying to bridge whatever gap had opened between us. Trevor took the glass, clinked it against mine perfunctorily, and took a sip. "To us." Then he set the glass down on the windowsill and turned to face me. In the candlelight, his face looked different. Harder. The Trevor I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd courted me with flowers and attention and promises, had been replaced by someone I didn't quite recognize. "Grace," he said, "I need to be honest with you." My heart stopped. Actually stopped. "What do you mean?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen before but never directed at me. This whole thing. The wedding. It moved so fast. "We've been together for 3 years," I said quietly. I know that. But I need some time. To adjust. To process everything." I stared at him, trying to understand what he was saying. "Trevor, we just got married. Today. An hour ago." "I know when we got married, Grace." His voice had an edge now, irritation barely concealed. "I was there." The champagne glass felt heavy in my hand. I set it down carefully on the dresser, afraid I might drop it otherwise. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need some space. I need to think. This has all been so overwhelming. My parents, your expectations, everyone watching us, judging us. I just need a minute to breathe." Each word was like a slap. Space. On our wedding night. Think. About what? About whether marrying me was a mistake. "Where are you going to go?" I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "There's another room down the hall. One of the groomsmen's rooms. I'll just crash there for a bit. Clear my head." "For a bit," I repeated. "For how long?" Trevor shrugged. Actually shrugged. Like this was a minor inconvenience we were discussing instead of the destruction of every dream I'd had for this night. "I don't know. A couple hours maybe. I'll be back." He moved toward the door, and panic rose in my throat. "Trevor, please. Talk to me. If something's wrong, we can work through it. Together. That's what marriage is." He paused with his hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I thought he might turn around. Might come back and hold me and tell me this was just cold feet, just nerves, just something we could fix. Instead, he said, "I'll see you later, Grace." And then he was gone. I stood in the middle of that beautiful room with rose petals and candles and champagne, and I felt like I was disappearing. Like I was becoming invisible, fading into nothing. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I'd waited. I'd been patient. I'd saved myself for marriage like my mother had taught me, like I'd promised myself I would. I'd imagined this night 1,000 times. The intimacy, the connection, the beginning of our life together as husband and wife. Instead, I was alone. I walked to the bed and sat down carefully, afraid that if I moved too quickly I might shatter. The rose petals stuck to my dress. One of the candles had started to smoke, the wick drowning in wax. I should take off this dress, I thought distantly. It was expensive. I should hang it up properly. But I couldn't move. I just sat there, staring at the door Trevor had walked through, waiting for him to come back. Waiting for him to realize he'd made a mistake. Waiting for this nightmare to end. If you're still with me, I want to thank you. I know this isn't an easy story to hear. But sometimes we need to share the painful parts so others don't feel alone in theirs. If this is touching your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. An hour passed. Then another. I finally stood up and unzipped my dress, hanging it carefully in the closet. I washed my face, removing the makeup that had been applied so carefully that morning. My eyes in the mirror looked hollow. Lost. I put on the silk nightgown I'd chosen for this night. White and delicate, with thin straps and lace at the hem. I'd felt beautiful when I'd tried it on at the store, imagining Trevor's reaction. Now it just felt like a costume. Like I was playing a role in a play that had been canceled. I got into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin even though I wasn't cold. I left one lamp on. Just a small light, in case Trevor came back and needed to see. The clock on the nightstand glowed green. 11:47 p.m. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Tried to tell myself that tomorrow would be better. That this was just a strange blip, a moment of panic that would pass. That Trevor and I would laugh about this someday. But I couldn't make myself believe it. At 11:58, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My eyes flew open, hope surging in my chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe Trevor had come to his senses. But the footsteps passed my door without stopping. Kept going down the hall. Getting fainter. And then I heard something else. A door opening. Closing. And then laughter. At first, I thought I was imagining it. That my exhausted, stressed mind was playing tricks on me. But no. It was definitely laughter. Quiet, trying to be muffled, but unmistakable. A woman's laugh. light and musical and intimate. And then a man's voice. Deep and familiar. Trevor's voice. I sat up in bed, my heart starting to pound in a sick, heavy rhythm. No, I was wrong. I had to be wrong. But the laughter continued, mixed with low voices I couldn't make out, coming from a room at the end of the hall. I knew which room it was. The layout had been in the wedding packet. That was where Jasmine was staying. My maid of honor's room. I told myself there was an innocent explanation. Maybe Trevor had run into Jasmine in the hallway. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe I was being paranoid and jealous and crazy. But something primal in me, some instinct I didn't know I had, told me to get up. To check. To know. I slid out of bed, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. I grabbed the hotel robe that had been hanging in the closet and wrapped it around myself. Not because I was cold, but because I felt naked, exposed, vulnerable. The hallway was dim, lit only by small sconces on the walls. Most of the doors were closed, the other guests asleep or gone. The building was quiet except for that sound at the end of the hall. I walked slowly, placing each foot carefully. My heart was beating so hard I thought surely someone would hear it, would come out and ask what I was doing wandering the halls at midnight on my wedding night. As I got closer to Jasmine's room, the voices became clearer. Not the words, not yet, but the tone. Intimate, familiar. The way people talk when they're alone together, when they think no one is listening. I stopped about 5 feet from the door. It wasn't fully closed. There was a gap of maybe 2 inches, just enough that a sliver of lamplight fell across the hallway floor. And through that gap, I could hear everything. "Can't believe we pulled it off," Jasmine was saying, her voice breathy, excited. "The whole day. God, I thought I was going to crack during the ceremony." Trevor's laugh, low and pleased. "You did great." The concerned best friend. "Perfect performance." "Well, you were pretty convincing too." The devoted groom. A pause. "Though I hated watching you kiss her. It was just for show. You know that." Trevor's voice was dismissive. Casual. Like he was discussing a business deal rather than his wedding. His marriage. "Me. I know. I just." Jasmine's voice dropped to something softer. Something that made my stomach turn. "I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore." "Soon," Trevor said. "We just have to wait a decent amount of time. Maybe 6 months. Then we can get the divorce, and no one will be too suspicious." Divorce. The word hit me like a physical blow. I had to put my hand against the wall to steady myself. 6 months, Jasmine sighed. "That's so long. It'll go fast. And hey, at least we're together now. Tonight." "Tonight," Jasmine repeated. And then there was a sound I couldn't mistake. The sound of kissing. Of clothes rustling. Of a bed creaking. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been seconds. Could have been minutes. Time had stopped meaning anything. My husband of 6 hours, was in bed with my best friend. The woman who'd helped me into my dress that morning. Who'd fixed my hair and held my bouquet and promised to always be there for me. And this wasn't a moment of weakness. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Calculated. They'd been together before tonight. Maybe for months. Maybe for years. And they'd gotten me to marry Trevor just so they could. What? Collect some kind of insurance money? Inherit something? Get access to my family's property? No, I realized with sudden sickening clarity. It wasn't about money. It was about the company. Trevor's father had been grooming him to take over Walsh Properties. But there was a condition. Gregory Walsh was old-fashioned. Traditional. He'd made it clear that he wouldn't hand the company over to Trevor until Trevor was married. Settled. Responsible. Trevor needed a wife to get his inheritance. To get control of the company. And I was convenient. Nice. From a good family. His mother approved of me. I'd played the role perfectly. I was never a person to him. I was just a checkmark on his list. A requirement he had to fulfill. And Jasmine? She must have known. Must have been part of the plan from the beginning. Maybe they'd been together even before Trevor and I met. Maybe she'd encouraged me to date him. To fall in love with him. To marry him. My best friend had helped destroy my life. The sounds from the room continued. They weren't being particularly quiet anymore. Why would they be? Everyone else was asleep. No one would hear. Except me. I should leave, I thought. I should walk away. Go back to my room. Pretend I never heard this. Pretend my life wasn't a lie. But I couldn't move. I stood there like a statue, listening to my husband have sex with my best friend, while my wedding dress hung in a closet down the hall, and my mother slept peacefully in her hotel room, thinking her daughter had finally found happiness. And then suddenly the anger came. It rose up from somewhere deep inside me, hot and fierce and clean. It burned away the shock, the hurt, the disbelief, and left behind something harder. Something sharp. They weren't going to get away with this. They weren't going to use me and discard me and walk away unscathed. I wasn't going to be their convenient means to an end. I was going to fight back. I stood outside that door, my hand pressed against the wall, my breathing shallow and quiet, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to burst in their screaming. I wasn't going to give them the drama they probably expected from me. The emotional, irrational woman who couldn't handle the truth. No, I was going to be smart, strategic. I was going to gather evidence. I was going to protect myself. And I was going to make sure they paid for what they'd done. But first, I needed proof. I slowly pulled my phone out of my robe pocket. My hands were shaking, making it hard to unlock the screen. I opened the voice recording app, pressed record, and held the phone up near the gap in the door. The sounds were unmistakable. The voices were clear. Trevor and Jasmine, in bed together, on my wedding night, discussing their plan. Discussing me like I was a business transaction. I recorded for 3 minutes. Every word, every laugh, every intimate sound. Then I stopped the recording and backed away from the door. My legs felt like they might give out, but I forced them to carry me back down the hallway, back to the honeymoon suite, back to the bed scattered with rose petals that now looked like drops of blood. I sat on the edge of the bed and played the recording back, just to make sure it was clear, just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't. Now what? The practical part of my brain, the part that had organized events and coordinated schedules and solved problems for years, kicked into gear. First, I needed to secure this recording. I emailed it to myself, uploaded it to a cloud storage service, and sent it to my mother's email with a message saying, "Don't open this unless something happens to me." Second, I needed to think about money. We'd opened a joint bank account before the wedding. I deposited my savings into it, about $15,000. Not a fortune, but enough to start over if I needed to. I logged into the banking app and transferred the entire amount back to my personal account. If Trevor checked tomorrow, he'd know. But by then, it wouldn't matter. Third, I needed legal advice. But it was after midnight. I couldn't call anyone now. That would have to wait until morning. Fourth, I needed to decide what to do right now. Tonight. Did I confront them? Did I pretend I didn't know and gather more evidence? Did I leave immediately? I looked around the honeymoon suite. The champagne, flat now in its glasses. The candles, most of them burned down to nubs. The rose petals, wilting at the edges. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't lie in this bed, in this nightgown, waiting for my husband to come back from having sex with my best friend. I needed to leave. But not quietly. Not like I was running away. I was going to let them know I knew. I was going to make sure they understood that their plan had failed. That I wasn't the naive fool they thought I was. I took off the silk nightgown and put on jeans and a sweater from my overnight bag. I pulled my hair back into a ponytail. I washed my face again, removing the last traces of this day. Then I repacked my bag. Efficiently. Quickly. Everything that was mine. My clothes, my toiletries, my phone charger. The gifts people had given me at the reception. The cards with money that were supposed to be for our honeymoon. I left Trevor's things. I didn't touch them. I didn't want anything that belonged to him. When I was done, I looked around the room one last time. This was supposed to be where my marriage began. Instead, it was where it ended. I picked up my bag, opened the door, and walked down the hallway to Jasmine's room. The sounds had stopped. Maybe they were asleep. Maybe they were just being quiet. I didn't care. I knocked on the door. Hard. 3 sharp raps that echoed in the silent hallway. There was a scrambling sound from inside. Whispered voices, frantic and panicked. I knocked again. "I know you're both in there." Silence. "Open the door, or I'm going to start yelling. And I promise you, everyone in this building will wake up." More scrambling. Then footsteps. The door opened a crack, and Trevor's face appeared. His hair was messed up. His shirt was on inside out. "Grace, don't," I said, my voice cold and level. "Don't say my name like you have any right to it." He opened his mouth, closed it. Behind him, I could see Jasmine sitting on the bed, a sheet wrapped around her, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. Good. She should be afraid. I heard everything, I continued. The whole conversation. The plan. The 6-month timeline. The fact that you're only married to me to get your father's company. I held up my phone. And I recorded it. All of it. Trevor's face went white. Actually white, like all the blood had drained out of it. You can't. I already did. And I've already backed it up in 3 different places. So don't even think about trying to take my phone. Jasmine made a small sound from the bed. A whimper. Like she was the victim here. Like she was the one who'd been betrayed. I looked at her. This woman I'd known since I was 11 years old. This woman who'd been at every important moment of my life. My first heartbreak. My graduation. The day my grandmother died. She'd held my hand through all of it, and I'd trusted her completely. How long? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. Just looked down at the sheet clutched in her hands. How long, Jasmine? Trevor stepped into the hallway, closing the door slightly behind him. Like he could shield Jasmine from this. Protect her. Grace, listen. It's not what you think. I laughed. I actually laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. Really? Because I think you married me to get access to your family's company. I think you and Jasmine have been having an affair for God knows how long. I think you planned to stay married to me just long enough to make it look legitimate, then divorce me and be with her. Is any of that wrong? Trevor didn't answer. That's what I thought. I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to find the man I'd fallen in love with. The one who'd sent me flowers and held my hand and promised to love me forever. But that man had never existed. He'd been a performance. A role Trevor played to get what he wanted. I'm leaving, I said. Tonight. And first thing Monday morning, I'm filing for an annulment. Or divorce. Whichever my lawyer says will hurt you more. Grace, you can't. I can. And I will. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You made a mistake, Trevor. You thought I was weak. Convenient. Easy to manipulate. But you were wrong. Trevor's jaw clenched. The mask was slipping now. I could see the real him underneath. Cold. Calculating. Angry that his plan had failed. If you file for divorce, I'll make your life hell, he said quietly. My family has lawyers. Money. Connections. We can drag this out for years. Make sure you don't get a penny. I don't want your money, I said. I want my life back. And you know what? Your father should probably know why his perfect son's marriage fell apart after 6 hours. I'm sure he'll love hearing that recording. That got his attention. His eyes widened slightly. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared at each other for a long moment. Trevor trying to intimidate me. Me refusing to back down. Finally, he looked away first. Get out of my way, I said. And to my surprise, he did. I walked past him, past Jasmine's door, where I knew she was still sitting on that bed, and down the stairs to the main level. My bag banged against my leg with each step. My heart was pounding, but I kept walking. The night air was cold when I stepped outside. It was almost 2 a.m. The parking lot was dark except for a few security lights. Most of the guests had driven home. The only cars left were the ones belonging to the wedding party. My car was parked near the back. A sensible sedan I'd bought used 3 years ago. It needed new tires and the air conditioning didn't work great, but it was mine. Paid for. Reliable. I threw my bag in the trunk and slid into the driver's seat. For a moment, I just sat there, my hands on the steering wheel breathing. I'd done it. I'd confronted them. I'd stood up for myself. I'd walked away. But now what? I couldn't go home. Trevor knew where I lived. We'd been planning to move into his condo after the honeymoon. But most of my things were still at my old apartment. He could show up there. Try to talk to me. Try to manipulate me into staying quiet. I couldn't go to my mother's place. She'd be devastated when she found out what happened. I needed to figure out how to tell her. How to explain that her dreams for my happy marriage had died before the wedding night was over. I needed somewhere safe. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one would think to look for me. I started the car and drove. I didn't have a destination in mind at first. I just needed to move. To put distance between myself and that building and everything that had happened there. I ended up at a 24-hour diner about 30 miles away. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner too long. There were only a few other people there. A trucker at the counter. A couple of teenagers in a corner booth. A tired-looking waitress who barely glanced at me as I slid into a booth by the window. I ordered coffee and didn't touch it. I just sat there, watching the steam rise from the cup, watching the sky slowly start to lighten on the horizon. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "We need to talk." I blocked his number. Another text from Jasmine. "Grace, please let me explain." I blocked her too. As the sun started to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt something strange. Something I didn't expect. Relief. Yes, my heart was broken. Yes, my marriage was over before it began. Yes, I'd lost my husband and my best friend in one night. But I was free. Free from pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. Free from trying to be the perfect girlfriend, the perfect fiancée, the perfect wife. Free from a life built on lies. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Grace? Honey, what's wrong?" And I told her everything. My mother listened to the whole story without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, could imagine her sitting in her bed, trying to process what I'd just told her. "Where are you?" she finally asked. "A diner. About 30 miles north of the venue. Stay there. I'm coming to get you." "Mom, you don't have to." "Grace." Her voice was firm now. Strong. The voice she'd used when I was little and had gotten hurt and needed her to be brave for me. "Stay there. I'll be there in an hour." She hung up before I could argue. True to her word, my mother pulled into the diner parking lot 53 minutes later. I saw her car, the old Toyota she'd been driving for a decade, and felt tears sting my eyes for the first time since I'd left the venue. She walked in, her eyes scanning the diner until they found me. Then she was sliding into the booth across from me, reaching across the table to take my hands in hers. "Oh, baby," she whispered. And that's when I broke. All the strength I'd been holding on to, all the cold determination that had gotten me through the confrontation and the drive and the long dark hours crumbled. I cried into my mother's hands while the waitress discreetly refilled my untouched coffee, and the other customers pretended not to notice. When I finally stopped, my mother handed me napkins from the dispenser and waited while I cleaned my face. "I'm so sorry," she said. "It's not your fault. I pushed you toward this. Toward marriage. Toward him. I thought he was a good man. I thought he'd take care of you." "You couldn't have known," I said. "I didn't know. And I was with him for 3 years. My mother's jaw tightened. "That boy is going to regret what he did. And that girl. I can't believe Jasmine would do this to you. After everything. They deserve each other," I said, and I meant it. "They're both liars. Both users. They'll probably make each other miserable." "Good." My mother's voice was fierce. Protective. "They should be miserable." We sat there for a while longer, not talking, just being together. Eventually, my mother paid for the coffee, and we walked out to the parking lot. The sun was fully up now. It was going to be a beautiful day. The kind of September morning that feels like a promise. "Come home," my mother said. "Stay with me for a while. We'll figure this out together." I nodded. "Okay. What about your apartment? Your things? I'll get them later. With a police escort if I have to. Right now I need to not think about it for a while." My mother squeezed my hand. "Then don't. Let's just go home. If you've made it this far in the story, thank you for staying with me. If this resonates with you, please drop a comment and share where you're from. It means the world." The next few days were a blur. I slept a lot. My mother let me, didn't push me to talk or make decisions or do anything except exist. She made soup I didn't eat and tea I let get cold, and just sat with me when the silence got too heavy. On Monday morning, I went to see a lawyer. Her name was Monica Bradford, and she came highly recommended by one of my mother's friends. She was in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I played her the recording. She listened without expression, then nodded. "This makes things very simple. North Carolina is a no-fault divorce state, but given the circumstances, the affair, the apparent premeditation, you have grounds for an annulment based on fraud." "Fraud. He married you under false pretenses. He had no intention of fulfilling the marriage contract. Legally speaking, that's fraud." Monica leaned back in her chair. "Now, the question is what you want. Do you want an annulment? A divorce? Do you want to pursue damages?" I thought about it. What did I want? "I want it to be over," I said slowly. "As fast as possible. I don't want his money. I don't want anything from him. I just want to not be married anymore." Monica nodded. Then we'll file for an annulment. Given the recording and the fact that the marriage was never consummated, a judge should grant it quickly. A few weeks, maybe a month. What about the recording? Do I have to give it to Trevor's father? You don't have to do anything with it. It's your property. But, Monica smiled slightly. It might be useful leverage if Trevor tries to fight the annulment or make things difficult. I left her office with a plan, a timeline, a way forward. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Grace. It was Patricia, Trevor's mother. Mrs. Walsh, I said carefully. I heard what happened. Trevor told me. Her voice was tight, controlled. He said you misunderstood. That nothing inappropriate happened with Jasmine. That you overreacted. Of course he'd lied to her. Of course he'd painted me as the hysterical, jealous wife. Mrs. Walsh, I have a recording of them together. I have proof of everything. Silence. Then, I'd like to hear it. So I sent it to her. The whole 3-minute recording. Every word. Every sound. She called me back an hour later. Her voice was different now. Broken. I'm so sorry, Grace. I didn't know. I didn't raise him to be this kind of man. I know you didn't. His father and we're going to handle this. Trevor won't fight the annulment. He won't bother you. You have my word. Thank you. Grace. Patricia's voice cracked. I'm so sorry. You deserved better. You deserved so much better. After we hung up, I felt something shift. The Walshes weren't going to protect Trevor anymore. Whatever consequences he faced from his family, and I suspected they would be significant, he'd brought on himself. The annulment was granted 3 weeks later. I didn't have to see Trevor. Didn't have to face him in court. His lawyer and my lawyer handled everything through paperwork and phone calls. Monica called me one Thursday afternoon and said, It's done. Legally, you were never married. Never married. Like the wedding had never happened. Like the ceremony and the vows and the white dress had all been erased. Part of me was grateful. Part of me felt strange, like I'd lost months of my life to something that officially never existed. I picked up my things from my old apartment with my mother and 2 of her friends as backup. Trevor didn't show. The place looked exactly as I'd left it. He hadn't touched anything. Hadn't changed anything. I packed my clothes, my books, my photos. I left the kitchen stuff we'd bought together, and the furniture we'd picked out for the condo we were never going to live in. I didn't want any of it. I quit my job at the nonprofit. Not because I had to, but because I needed a fresh start. Something that wasn't tainted by memories of Trevor picking me up after work, or coming to office parties, or meeting my co-workers, who'd all been so happy for me when we got engaged. I used the money I'd saved, the money I'd transferred out of our joint account that night, to take some time off, to figure out what I actually wanted instead of what I thought I was supposed to want. I spent a lot of time with my mother. We cooked together, watched old movies, went for walks in the park near her house. We talked about my father sometimes, about the man she'd loved who'd left her, and how she'd rebuilt her life afterward. The hardest part, she told me one evening as we sat on her porch watching the sunset, wasn't the leaving. It was learning to trust myself again. I'd chosen wrong. I'd loved the wrong person. And I was terrified I'd do it again. How did you get past it? She smiled. Time. And realizing that making one mistake doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you're human. Slowly, gradually, I started to feel like myself again. Not the self I'd been before Trevor. That woman was gone, and I didn't mourn her, but a new self. Stronger. Wiser. Less willing to compromise on the things that mattered. I started looking for a new job. Not in event planning, that felt too tied to my old life, but in something adjacent. I ended up at a small marketing firm that worked primarily with nonprofits and small businesses. The pay wasn't great, but the people were kind and the work felt meaningful. I made new friends. Carefully. Slowly. I was more guarded now, less likely to trust easily, but that didn't mean I was closed off. Just more selective. I heard through the grapevine that Trevor and Jasmine's relationship had imploded within 2 months of the wedding. Apparently, once they didn't have to hide anymore, once the thrill of the affair was gone, they realized they actually had nothing in common. No real connection. They'd been bound together by deception and lust, and neither of those things made a foundation for lasting love. Trevor had lost his position at his father's company. Gregory Walsh had been furious when he heard the recording, furious that his son had treated marriage like a business transaction. He demoted Trevor to a junior position and made it clear that the company would never be his to run. Jasmine had moved to another state. No one I knew had heard from her. I didn't look her up, didn't wonder about her. She'd made her choices. A year after the wedding that wasn't, I was in a good place. Not perfect. Healing isn't linear, and there were still days when I felt sad or angry or confused about what had happened. But mostly I felt okay. Steady. Whole. I was sitting in a coffee shop one Saturday morning, working on a marketing proposal, when someone slid into the chair across from me. I looked up, ready to tell whoever it was that the seat was taken, and froze. It was Trevor. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. His hair needed a cut, and his shirt wasn't as perfectly pressed as it used to be. He looked like someone who'd been knocked down and was still figuring out how to get back up. "Grace," he said. "Can we talk?" Every instinct told me to leave, to walk out, to not give him a single second of my time. But something else, curiosity, maybe, or a need for closure, made me stay. 5 minutes, I said. Trevor nodded, like he'd expected that. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For what I did to you. For the lies. He trailed off, looking down at his hands. For all of it. Okay. That's it. Just okay. What do you want me to say, Trevor? That I forgive you? That it's all water under the bridge? I shook my head. I don't forgive you. And I'm not sure I ever will. You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me. You used me. You treated me like I was nothing. I know. His voice was quiet. I know I did. And I've had to live with that. With what I did. With who I was. Why? I asked. The question I'd been carrying for a year. Why me? Was I really just that convenient? Trevor was quiet for a long moment. At first, yeah. You were nice. My parents liked you. You fit the image I needed. He looked up, meeting my eyes. But somewhere along the way, I think part of me actually did care about you. And that terrified me. Because caring meant being vulnerable. Meant being real. And I didn't know how to do that. So you sabotaged it. I sabotaged it, he agreed. With Jasmine, who I'd been seeing on and off since college. Who was safe because we both knew it wasn't real love. It was just familiar. Easy. And now she's gone. My father barely speaks to me. I lost the company. I lost you. He smiled, but it was sad. Bitter. I lost everything. And I deserved it. I looked at this man I'd almost built a life with. This man who'd destroyed me and was now sitting across from me, broken himself. And I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction at his downfall. No desire to comfort him or punish him further. Just nothing. I hope you figure out how to be honest, I said. With yourself and with whoever comes next. Because this, I gestured between us. This can't happen again. Not to anyone else. Trevor nodded. I know. I'm working on it. Therapy. Trying to understand why I am the way I am. Good. I stood up, gathering my laptop and papers. I mean that. Good luck, Trevor. He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I really am sorry, Grace. I know you are. And then I left. Walked out of that coffee shop and into the bright morning sunshine, and I didn't look back. That was 3 years ago now. I'm sitting on my own porch as I tell you this story. In a little house I bought with money I saved working at a job I love. I'm drinking tea from a mug that says, "Nevertheless," she persisted, that my mother gave me for my birthday. And I'm happy. Not the desperate, grasping kind of happy that depends on someone else making you feel worthy or loved. But the quiet, steady kind of happy that comes from knowing yourself. From liking yourself. From building a life that's authentically yours. I never got married again. Maybe I will someday, maybe I won't. It doesn't matter anymore. My worth isn't tied to my relationship status. My value doesn't come from whether someone chooses me. I choose me. Every day. And that's enough. I learned so much from what happened on my wedding night. I learned that people can lie to your face while smiling. That betrayal can come from the people you trust most. That sometimes love is just a performance. And you're the only one who doesn't know it's not real. But I also learned that you're stronger than you think. That you can survive things that feel like they'll destroy you. That closure doesn't always come from confrontations or apologies. Sometimes it comes from just deciding to let go and move forward. I learned that the right person won't make you feel anxious or uncertain or like you have to prove your worth. The right person will make you feel seen, valued, chosen, not as a means to an end, but as an end in yourself. And I learned that sometimes the wedding night isn't where your story ends. Sometimes it's just where a new, better story begins. If you're going through something similar, if someone has betrayed you or used you or made you feel small, please know this. It's not your fault. You didn't cause their bad behavior by trusting them. You didn't deserve it by being kind or loving or open. Their choices are about them, not you. And you will survive this. You will heal. You will find happiness again. Maybe in a relationship, maybe in yourself, maybe in ways you can't even imagine yet. But you will survive. I promise. Thank you for listening to my story, for staying with me through the hard parts, for witnessing my pain and my healing.